Famous Autopsies Part 26, Shanann Watts. This one's especially terrible, so trigger warning. Shanann Watts didn't even know that she should be afraid of her husband, Chris. He was a master of disguise. Her biggest concern was that he was having an affair. Though that was true, he was also plotting something sinister. He was kicking around the idea of killing both of his young daughters, his wife, and their unborn child. On the morning of August 13th, 2018, Chris and Shanann had a serious talk about their marriage. It's unclear exactly what was said, but the conversation ended with Chris callously strangling her to death. When little Cece and Bella began asking questions, he explained that their mom was sleeping. He then transported Shanann's body into his truck, loaded up the girls, and headed to one of his work sites. Once parked, he smothered both of his daughters to death and put each body in a separate oil tank. He also dug Shanann a shallow grave. The examination. A large clump of tissue covered in sand and debris was found near her body. It was later determined to be her deceased fetus. She had expelled the baby from her womb after death. There are patterned abrasions present on her neck and left side of her face. There is severe bruising present on the skin of her neck as well as underlying muscles and soft tissue. These contusions extend up to her jawline. Her body was found in a moderate state of decomposition with discoloration, skin slippage, and bloating. This can make it difficult to spot typical abnormalities of strangulation like petechial hemorrhage. Petechial hemorrhage is a rash caused by burst surface capillaries. It can also make it difficult to spot superficial wounds. The cause of death is asphyxiation due to manual strangulation, and it's classified as a homicide.
Colorado judge has denied prosecutors' request to block release of the autopsy reports of Shanann Watts and her two daughters. Investigators say Chris Watts, the husband and father, killed the three and dumped their bodies at an oil company work site. Shanann was pregnant. The Weld County District Attorney argued the cause of death will be critical evidence and should be sealed, but a judge ruled Friday that only the county coroner can ask to seal autopsy.
WATTS.
Wow. What's going on right now around your house?
Right now it's you got K9 units, the sheriff's department. Everybody's like they're doing their best right now to figure out like if they can get a scent, see where they went. If they went on foot, they went in a car, or they went somewhere. And right now it's just like they've been on point. They're going through the house trying to get a scent, and hopefully they can pick something up to where it's going to lead to something.
What happened? Your wife came home. Tell me what's.
She came home from the airport 2 a.m. and I left around 5:15. She was still here, and like about 12:10 and that afternoon, her friend Nicole showed up at the door. Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say but she never got back to me, but she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well. And that's what really concerned a lot of people is like, if she's not getting back to her, like if she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. Like she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home. And then walked in the house and nothing was vanished. Nothing was here. I mean, she wasn't here. The kids weren't here. Nobody was here.
What's your wife's name?
Shanann. SHANANN.
What's your kids' name?
Bella and Celeste.
How do you spell Celeste?
CELESTE.
How old are your daughters?
4, Bella's 4, Celeste is 3.
And so, how many times did you try calling her?
I called her 3 times, texted her about 3 times just to say, what's going on. Like because after I called her and texted her once, it's like maybe she was just busy. Like she had just gotten back. Like everybody's probably calling her from her trip. She just got back from Arizona, and I figured she was just busy. But when her friend showed up, that's what was like. It registered. Like, all right, this isn't right.
Do you think she just took off? Do you think?
I mean, right now I don't even want to just like throw anything out there. Like, I hope that she's somewhere safe right now and with the kids. But I mean, could she have just taken off? I don't know. But if
doorbell detects the visitor. So when we were over at the neighbor's house the next day, we were looking at his camera as well, and it didn't show anybody walking up to the driveway, which is kind of weird. That's one reason I put that on there, because it showed Nicole dropping her off, but nobody actually walking up to the house. It was kind of weird, but she was in the house.
Okay. And what time are we talking?
This is still 1:48.
Okay.
So, 2 a.m. Shanann gets into bed with me. 4 a.m. That's when my alarm goes off for work, and I'm supposed to get dressed, brush my teeth, everything I do upstairs.
Okay.
4:15. That's when I get back, slide right into bed next to her, and start having a conversation with her about having the house up for sale and talking about actually proceeding with the separation.
Okay.
And obviously it gets pretty emotional, like we're talking about, we felt the disconnection was there, falling out of love, and trying to stay together, maybe just for the kids' sake, but we're realizing that doing our homework, it's not, most of the time that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty emotional because we have 2 beautiful kids and we have 1 on the way. So it's just a matter of it was very emotional, we were both crying, and at the end, we just said, she said she was going to take the kids to her friend's house for the day. She would be back. Okay. And I was like, okay, it's fine. And so I went downstairs, made my protein shake. It was 5 a.m., that's when I did that. Packed my lunchbox, had my oatmeal, chicken, took my water jug up. 5:15, I went outside, backed my truck up, was loaded up. Had my book bag, my lunchbox, computer, water jug, my big clear container. I put big clear containers in my truck so it's easy just to pull out, pull in, just depending on what I'm going to use. My O-ring kit, I knew I was going to do some stuffing box rubbers that day, so I got some various open wrenches from my toolbox. I know those would work better than the ones they would give me.
Okay.
5:30, that's when I went to work.
Okay.
And I hadn't heard from Shanann for about 2 hours there, so at 7:40 I texted her and asked her if she could tell me where the kids were, if she took them anywhere.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
At 12 I texted her again, call me. Nothing. And then about 12:10 p.m. that's when my doorbell visitor, another visitor, and I was like, it popped up on my phone and it says it was Nicole. And I tried to put it on my phone to see if she's just trying to get in or whatnot. And I hear her she's on the phone trying to, I could hear her through my phone saying she's trying to get through to Shanann, so that's when I called her. I called her at 12:20, see what was going on. She told me that Shanann hadn't responded to any of her calls all day, or any of her friends' calls all day.
Okay.
And that's very strange.
Happen. I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise.
Chris,
I know.
Stop. It's time. Just stop for a minute. Take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath right now.
There's a reason you feel sick to your stomach. And when people hold stuff inside, it makes you physically ill. And I can just tell on your face, I could tell from the second you walked in that you were wanting to just come clean and just be done with this. And I appreciate that because you knew sitting down in that chair that you weren't going to pass today, and you knew I was going to find out because I told you that. And then you continued to stay knowing that you could, at the end, say, you know what, I just need to get this off my chest. I just need to tell you what happened. We're not here to play games. We're not here to do any of that with you. We just want to know what happened. So can you start from the beginning and tell us what happened?
Everything that I have told you, I did not lie on this polygraph. I don't know how much I could tell you right now. I did not.
It's not even an option right now because you did not pass the polygraph. So I know you were being deceptive. So that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. That's the issue right now.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about that. I know you want to tell us. I can see it in your face. Holding this lie in is going to do nothing for you.
I know this. Okay. I'm not trying to cover things up.
Yeah, but you kind of are because it's normal. Normal people would do that. Normal people that make a mistake initially are going to go, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. That's normal. I would expect that. It's just like if you ask your kid, did you write on the wall? And they go, no. And you're like, you have a marker on your hand. I know you just wrote on the wall. And they're like, oh, okay. That's a natural reaction that someone's going to initially lie about something like that and then eventually tell the truth. So this is your eventually telling the truth time. This is where the rubber meets the road, Chris. Don't let this continue any longer, please.
I'm not trying to make anything continue. I want them back home,
But you know they're not coming back home. You know that,
I don't know in the back of my head. I hope they come back home.
but you know they're not.
I hope they come back home. Well, no, I freaked out about her.
You're her.
Did they leave after that for a long time?
So she started hurting kids.
They were.
Probably because what happened.
One.
She smelled it. They're choking.
I didn't hear anything. When I was downstairs, they came back up and they were gone. I don't know, like me talking to her about that. Talking to her about separation and everything, about
Thinking she lost it.
I don't know, like, what else to say, like, I freaked out. Those are my kids.
It's very sweet. And it's not that one time. You were leaving the place and going to work. And she freaked out over the separation and everything.
Like, she laid back down, but that's not downstairs, but I heard like a little commotion upstairs, but I didn't think anything of it.
And then you go back upstairs and she is
I can see, like, she was on top of me.
choking her or did she kill her?
They're blue.
Both of them.
Yeah.
She choked both of them to death.
I freaked out in the champagne with her. I don't want to say. I don't want to say it though. I might call the cops about it.
So when you do all the bodies off or something?
I mean, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't freak out.
It was supposed to be over. By 2026, the case had become nothing more than a fading memory in a quiet town that had already moved on. The headlines were gone, the conversations had stopped, and the name that once filled every corner of the community had slowly disappeared from daily life. To most people, it was a tragedy, unfortunate, but explained, closed, finished. But not everyone believed that. There are always a few who remember differently. The ones who replay the details in their minds, who notice the small things that don't quite fit. The ones who never fully accepted the version of events they were given. For them, the case didn't end, it just went quiet. The official story had been simple. Too simple, some would later say. Authorities moved quickly, presenting their findings with confidence. It was ruled an accident. A sudden, unavoidable moment that ended in loss. Painful, yes, but not suspicious, not criminal. At least, that's what everyone was told. And for a while, people believed it. But time has a way of revealing what certainty tries to hide. It started with a message, unexpected, anonymous, and impossible to ignore. Just a few words, sent without context. The autopsy report was never meant to be seen. No name, no explanation, just that one sentence, sitting there like a crack in the foundation of everything people thought they knew. At first, it sounded like nothing. Rumors come and go, especially around cases like this. But something about it felt different. It didn't ask for attention. It didn't try to convince. It simply existed, waiting to be noticed. And once it was, there was no going back. Because if there really was a report, one that had been hidden all this time, then it meant something had been kept from the public. Something important. Something that could change everything. And if you've ever followed a story where the truth doesn't quite match the official version, so make sure you like and subscribe. Because what comes next isn't just unexpected, it's unsettling in ways no one saw coming. Because buried deep within that sealed file was a version of events no one was prepared for. A version that didn't match the story they had been told at all. Back when it first happened, everything moved fast. Almost too fast. Within hours, the scene had been processed, statements were taken, and a timeline was already forming. Authorities spoke with confidence, as if they understood exactly what had taken place. By the time the public heard the details, it sounded complete, clean, organized, and final. There was no sense of mystery, no lingering uncertainty, just a tragic event with a clear explanation. And people accepted it, because that's what you do when officials present answers so quickly. You trust the process. You believe that every detail has been examined, every possibility considered. But now, looking back from 2026, that certainty feels different. It feels rushed. The timeline, for example, seemed straightforward at first. The victim was last seen at a specific time, in a specific place, surrounded by familiar faces. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. Then just hours later, everything changed. The conclusion was delivered almost immediately. An accident, they said. No foul play, no deeper investigation required. But when you start to look closer, small inconsistencies begin to surface. Witness statements didn't always align perfectly. Some details shifted depending on who was telling the story. A few key individuals were only briefly questioned, their accounts accepted without much scrutiny. Others, people who might have had important information, were never fully brought into the investigation at all. And then there were the gaps. Moments in the timeline that felt incomplete. Periods of time where no one could clearly explain what had happened, yet somehow those gaps didn't seem to matter in the final report. They were brushed aside, treated as insignificant. The community was grieving, and the idea of a simple explanation was easier to accept than the possibility of something more complicated. But now, with distance and perspective, those overlooked details don't feel small anymore. They feel important. And if you've been following this story closely so far, don't forget to share it. Because the deeper we go, the more it starts to feel like something wasn't just missed, it was ignored. Because the biggest question isn't just what happened that night. It's why certain things were never fully questioned in the first place. And that question only becomes more unsettling when you realize what was still hidden at the time, waiting inside a report no one was supposed to see. The report didn't look like much at first. Just a few pages, clinical, precise, the kind of document that speaks in measured language, where every word is chosen carefully, and nothing is left to interpretation. But sometimes it's not what is said loudly that matters, it's what is written quietly, buried between the lines. And almost immediately, something felt wrong. The first detail that stood out wasn't dramatic, but it was impossible to ignore. The estimated time of death didn't match the timeline that had been presented years earlier. Not by a few minutes, not by a small margin that could be explained away. It was off in a way that changed everything. If the timing was wrong, then the sequence of events couldn't be right either. That alone should have raised questions back then, serious ones. But those questions were never asked publicly, because the report itself was never made public. As the document was read more carefully, more inconsistencies began to appear. Observations that had never been mentioned before. Details that didn't fit the official explanation. Nothing overly graphic, nothing exaggerated, but enough to suggest that what happened wasn't as simple as it had been made to seem. There were signs that pointed to a different kind of situation. Not something sudden, but something that unfolded over time in a way that didn't align with the story everyone had accepted. And then came the detail that changed everything. A single note, written in the same calm, professional tone as the rest of the report, but carrying a weight that was impossible to ignore. It suggested that the cause of death, as originally stated, didn't fully account for what was observed. Not even close. And that realization shifts everything. Because it means the truth wasn't just simplified, it may have been replaced entirely. If this is your first time hearing something like this, go ahead and hit that like button. Because stories like this don't just challenge what we know. They force us to question how much we were never told. At this point, it's no longer about minor inconsistencies. It's about a version of events that doesn't hold up under its own evidence. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Trying to get answers should have been simple. At least, that's what it felt like in the beginning. If new information had surfaced, especially something as critical as an undisclosed autopsy report, then reopening the conversation should have been the natural next step. A chance to clarify, to correct, to finally fill in the gaps that had been left behind. But that's not what happened. The first attempts were met with silence, emails unanswered, calls redirected, requests acknowledged, then quietly ignored. It was as if the case still carried an invisible boundary around it, one that people were hesitant to cross, even years later. And then slowly, the responses started coming in. Short, careful, measured. Most of them repeated what had already been said years ago. The investigation had been thorough. The conclusions were sound. There was no reason to revisit the case. No indication that anything had been overlooked. It was the same certainty, delivered in almost the exact same words. But now, with the report in hand, that certainty didn't feel convincing anymore. It felt rehearsed. Not everyone stayed within that line, though. A few voices, quiet ones, began to admit that something hadn't felt right back then. That there were details they didn't fully understand. That certain decisions were made quickly, without the kind of depth they would expect in a case like this. They didn't say it loudly. They didn't push too far. But they said enough. And then there were the others, the ones who pushed back strongly. The ones who didn't just defend the original findings, but resisted the idea of reopening the case entirely. They argued that it would only bring unnecessary attention, that it would reopen wounds, that it would do more harm than good. But that reaction raises a different kind of question. If everything was handled correctly, why resist a second look? Why not welcome transparency? Because the more resistance there was, the clearer the pattern became. Details overlooked, questions unanswered, a report hidden. So let me know what you think. Do you believe this was simply a series of mistakes, or something more deliberate? Because at this point, it's hard to ignore the possibility that the truth wasn't just lost, it was kept out of reach. And now that it's been found again, it's starting to feel like someone never wanted it seen in the first place. Now, in 2026, the case no longer feels like something that belongs in the past. It feels unfinished. What was once accepted as a closed chapter has quietly reopened, not through speculation or rumor, but through something far more difficult to ignore. Evidence that was always there, just never seen. And with that, everything begins to shift. The story people believed for years no longer holds the same weight. The certainty that once surrounded the case now feels fragile, almost like it was built on something incomplete. Because when one key piece of truth is hidden, it doesn't just leave a gap, it changes the entire picture. For those closest to the victim, the impact is deeper than words can fully explain. It's not just about revisiting the past. It's about realizing that the answers they were given may never have been the full truth. That the closure they tried to accept was built on something that didn't fully add up. But with that realization comes something else. A reason to keep asking questions. A reason to look again. Because the truth, no matter how delayed, still matters. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it forces people to confront decisions that can't be undone. and even when it reveals that something could have been handled differently. If you've stayed with this story until the end, make sure you subscribe and share, because stories like this are more than just stories. They're reminders. Reminders that not every answer is final, and not every case is as simple as it seems. Because sometimes, the most unsettling part isn't what happened. It's how easily the truth can be set aside, how quickly questions can be silenced, and how long something important can remain hidden without anyone realizing it. And maybe the most important question of all isn't just what the report revealed, but how many other stories are still out there, waiting for someone to finally look a little closer. Because in cases like this, the truth doesn't disappear.